Archaeologists reached the end of the tunnel under Giza and found a sealed door. There is a tunnel under the Giza Plateau that no official press release has ever fully described, not the ones tourists walk through, not the shafts that Egyptologists mapped in the 19th century and filed away without controversy. A different tunnel, one that a team of researchers reached the end of in 2023, after years of slow, methodical excavation through compacted limestone and ancient fill. And at the end of that tunnel, they found a door, not a symbolic door, not an architectural void, a sealed stone door, set into the bedrock, with no handle, no visible mechanism, and no permit issued for what lies behind it. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities confirmed the tunnel's existence in a press release dated March 2023. The press release is 4 paragraphs long. It uses the word significant twice. It does not name the tunnel's depth, the material of the door, or the reason no one has opened it. It does not explain why a tunnel of that length, at that depth, leading to a sealed chamber, was quietly rediscovered after decades of survey work and then handed back into administrative holding. That press release is where the official record ends. This is where the investigation begins. And before we go further, I need to pause for a second, because what I'm about to tell you gets significantly darker. And I realized a while ago that some of this cannot be fully explained in a video format. The complete reconstruction of what was sealed beneath the Giza Plateau, the architectural record of the tunnel's dimensions and alignment, the textual cross-references that name this location by a phrase used nowhere else in the Egyptian corpus, the survey data from 2018 that identified the chamber before the excavation confirmed it, I put it all into a written document. It's linked below and the QR code is on your screen. Now let's continue. The tunnel sits beneath the Khafre Causeway. That is not an incidental location. The Khafre Causeway is the paved ceremonial road connecting the second pyramid complex to its valley temple at the eastern edge of the plateau. It runs roughly northeast to southwest for approximately 494 meters and has been studied continuously since Auguste Mariette's initial excavation in the 1850s. What Mariette did not have was ground-penetrating radar. In 2018, the Scan Pyramids Consortium, a joint research effort involving teams from French and Japanese universities, conducted a systematic subsurface survey of the plateau using a combination of muon tomography and ground-penetrating radar. The technical report from that survey, publicly available through the Scan Pyramids project documentation, identified a series of anomalies beneath the causeway corridor. One of those anomalies was designated anomaly G7. The report describes it as measuring approximately 9 meters in its longest detected dimension, sitting at a depth consistent with Old Kingdom subterranean construction. The document notes the anomaly in neutral language, gives it a catalog number, and moves on. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities classified the Khafre Causeway corridor as a protected zone pending a comprehensive master plan for Giza subsurface investigation. That master plan has been in active development since 2018. No excavation permits for anomaly G7 were granted to any research team from 2018 through 2022. The Scan Pyramids project, which produced the radar data that found it, did not hold excavation rights. The void sat beneath protected limestone that could not be disturbed without ministerial authorization that had not been issued. Then in late 2022, without a public announcement tied to any specific research initiative, excavation began. The team that conducted the excavation has not been named in any press release. The institutional affiliation, listed in the March 2023 release, is the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities itself, operating through its own archaeological division. Major discoveries at Giza in the modern era have almost always involved international academic partnerships that provide external documentation, peer review, and institutional accountability. A ministry-only operation produces a different kind of record. What the March 2023 press release confirms: a tunnel was accessed. It descended into the bedrock at an angle consistent with Old Kingdom subterranean construction. It terminated at a sealed stone structure, and the contents remain unknown. That is the entire official record of one of the most significant archaeological finds in the history of the plateau. Now here is where the textual record becomes something you cannot ignore. There is a limestone relief fragment in the basement of the Cairo Museum catalogued as JE 98944. Excavated from a shaft tomb at Saqqara in 1954 by Ahmed Fakhri, it was photographed, drawn in detail across 3 pages of his field notes, and described using a phrase that does not appear in the official registry entry that followed. He called it a mechanism of unknown industrial purpose. The official registry, amended in 1971 under a different administration and without new analysis, describes the same fragment as decorative funerary art. The reclassification happened 17 years after excavation. The glyph sequence on JE 98944 has a standard translation that circulates in the limited context where the fragment has been mentioned at all. The accepted reading produces a phrase interpreted as the great lifting of the house of Ptah, a religious dedication, unremarkable, the kind of funerary language that appears across dozens of Old Kingdom tomb contexts. But Fakhri's field notes record something the standard translation omits. Attached to the glyph sequence is a determinative, a classifier symbol that ancient Egyptian scribes used to indicate the grammatical and conceptual category of a word. The determinative Fakhri documented is a seated figure interacting with a horizontal element, a classifier that appears in only one other confirmed location in the entire hieroglyphic corpus. That location is a papyrus fragment from Deir el-Medina, in a text describing tools brought to a specific construction site. Not a religious dedication, an inventory entry. The determinative changes the grammatical category of the entire phrase. It is not a spiritual act. It is a physical object, and the closest cognate in related Semitic root structures carries a meaning several researchers have noted in private correspondence without publishing. The meaning is the thing that turns. This matters for what comes next. In the Wadi Hammat, the primary quarrying corridor between the Nile Valley and the Red Sea coast, the passage walls carry more than 250 documented inscriptions. One of those, catalogued as Hammat inscription 87 by the Egyptian Antiquities Authority and dating to the reign of Mentuhotep II around 2000 B.C.E., records an expedition that brought back what the text specifically identifies as the complete mechanism of the House of Ptah. The same phrase, the same grammatical structure, the same administrative register. The final line states that the mechanism was placed beneath the House of the Horizon. That phrase in Old Kingdom topographical language refers specifically to the Giza Plateau. The inscription does not record what happened to the mechanism after that. It records only that it arrived. The mechanism was placed. The inscription ends. The trail stops at Giza. Before we move on to what Enoch says about sealed chambers, stop for a second. What you just heard about the mechanism of the House of Ptah is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see it written out next to the original Hammat inscription. The placement record, the administrative language, it's all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back, because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. QR code is on your screen. Now we need to go further back than Egypt, further back than the Old Kingdom, further back than any pharaoh, to a text that the church removed from the Bible 17 centuries ago and that describes a sealed door in language that should not exist, the Book of Enoch. The church voted it out of Scripture at the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE. For 17 centuries, it was banned and called too dangerous for Christian teaching. Then in 1947, 11 copies surfaced in the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. More copies than were found of Deuteronomy, more than most books that stayed in the Bible. The scholarly community has never fully resolved what to do with that fact. Dr. Michael Knibb, whose 1978 Oxford translation remains the standard edition for scholars, identified specific chapters as containing geographical language, inconsistent with symbolic literature, compass directions, depth measurements, specific terrain features, not vague spiritual geography, something more like a survey report. Chapter 17, verse 5 describes Enoch being taken to a place beyond the Great Sea where the waters above and below converge. Verse 7 describes the floor as dark stone, smooth and cold, unlike any stone found on land. Enoch is describing basalt, the volcanic rock that forms the ocean floor. He had no way to know the ocean floor is paved in basalt. No ancient human had seen it. The ocean floor sits 2 miles down on average. Yet Enoch describes it accurately. Chapter 18. Verse 9 specifies the walls of the structure are made of what the Ge'ez calls stones of hail, ice compressed under enormous pressure. The floor is dark basalt, smooth and cold. Fire burns along the perimeter walls but does not melt the ice. Outside the structure, pillars of superheated water rise from vents in the ocean floor. He describes the sound as a constant low sustained roar, like something pressurized and contained. The door is set into the ice wall, on the side facing away from the vents. Enoch writes that he reached toward it and Uriel stopped him. No explanation, just do not touch it. There is one detail that Western editions strip out entirely. The Ge'ez text adds that the door has no handle on the outside. It can only be opened from within. Whatever is inside is not trying to get out, or it cannot. The door was not designed for a visitor. It was designed for a warden. Now here is where the two records begin to converge. The Giza manuscript tradition contains a passage in chapter 17 that does not appear in any Western edition. Access to the Axum manuscripts was restricted after 1974 following the Ethiopian Revolution. Dr. James Vanderkam of the University of Notre Dame applied for access in 1988. Denied. Applied again in 1997. Denied. In a 2001 interview with Biblical Archaeology Review, Vanderkam stated that at least 3 passages in the Giza tradition are known to scholars through secondary references but have not been available for direct examination in over 50 years. One of those passages, described through a citation trail going back to a 1962 Ethiopian Orthodox commentary, concerns what Enoch saw at the entrance to the chamber before the door. Translated from Amharic into academic English by theologian Haile Tsege in 1989, he saw the stone of the threshold, and it was marked with the sign of the guardian. The sign was the device that turns without hand, the same mark that the sons of the ancient builders placed on the stone they set beneath the house of the Great Light. The house of the Great Light. In ancient Jewish cosmological tradition, that phrase refers to a location associated with the sun disk, the horizon glyph, the akhet. The Egyptian term for the horizon in its architectural sense is the akhet. The Great Pyramid was named Akhet Khufu. The Giza Plateau is referenced in Old Kingdom administrative texts as the House of the Horizon. Hammat inscription 87 records a mechanism being placed beneath the House of the Horizon. The Giza secondary source describes a device that turns without hand placed on stone beneath the House of the Great Light. These are not the same document, not the same culture, not the same language family, not even the same continent. They were written roughly 2,000 years apart, and they describe the same thing in the same location with a specificity that coincidence does not explain. The sealed door at the end of the tunnel under the Giza Plateau was not found by accident. The ground-penetrating radar surveys of 2018 identified the void. The surveys were conducted with scientific precision. The anomaly was logged and given a catalog number. And then, before any international research team could file for excavation permits, the ministry began excavating it internally. The tunnel was accessed. The door was reached. The March 2023 press release confirmed its existence in 4 paragraphs and stopped. Now consider what is on the other side of that administrative silence. In 2003, a materials analysis team from the University of Liverpool documented the interior contact faces of granite casing stones at the Giza Eastern Cemetery, the surfaces pressed against adjacent blocks, never visible once the structure was complete. On those hidden surfaces, they found parallel grooves consistent in depth to within 0.22 millimeters, arranged in a helical pattern. Helical cut marks require rotational force. Rotational force applied to granite at that scale, using the hand tools available in 2500 B, C, E, is not reproducible under controlled experimental conditions. Dr. Alan Phillis presented the groove documentation at the 2004 conference of the Society for Egyptian Archaeology, and described the marks as consistent with a rotating cutting apparatus of unknown provenance. The groove data was published. A mechanism explanation was not. Dr. Christopher Dunn submitted a separate analysis to the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, noting that the pitch and angle of the helical pattern matches the specifications of an Archimedean screw adapted for compression rather than fluid movement. The same geometry scaled for stone rather than water. The submission was declined without stated cause. J.E. 9894, 4 names, a rotating device. The granite blocks carry the marks that device would leave. Those 2 facts sit in separate archives and have never been formally connected in a published paper. Hammat inscription, 87 records that device being transported to the Giza Plateau and placed beneath it. The Book of Enoch, in a passage the Western manuscript tradition does not contain, describes a mark on a threshold stone in a sealed chamber, and calls that mark the device that turns without hand, the same mark placed beneath the House of the Great Light. The Scan Pyramids radar survey identified a 9-meter void at depth beneath the Khafre Causeway in 2018. In 2023, excavators reached the end of a tunnel and found a sealed door. The door has not been opened. No excavation permit for what lies behind it has been issued to any independent research team. The ministerial assessment of the door's significance remains internal. Access to the chamber it seals has not been granted to any outside party. This is what the official record shows when you pull every document that exists and lay them beside each other. Now here is what the genetic record adds, because it arrived from a direction no one expected. In 2021, A team published a study in Nature Communications analyzing ancient DNA from 93 individuals buried at Giza and Saqqara across a 500-year window spanning the core pyramid construction period. The individuals buried with administrative grave goods, the organizational class, not the labor class, carried haplogroup X2b. That lineage is concentrated today in the northern Levant and anomalously in the Zagros Mountains of western Iran. The Zagros Mountains contain the earliest known archaeological examples of Archimedean screw precursor technology, dated to the late 4th millennium B.C.E., predating the Egyptian Old Kingdom by several centuries. The people buried at Giza with administrative authority during the period when the helical groove marks were being cut carried DNA linking them to the region where the device described on JE 98944 first appears in the record. That connection has not been addressed in any mainstream Egyptological publication. Their grave goods include objects associated with measurement, record keeping, and orientation in concentrations that do not appear in the labor graves at all. They were not just organizing the work, they were maintaining a record of something, and whatever that record documented was placed beneath the plateau they built on. Now, go back to the Book of Enoch with that in mind. Chapter 69 of the Parables section contains a roster. It is a catalog of imprisoned beings and the specific domains of knowledge each one transmitted to humanity. Barakal taught astrology, Arachiel taught geology and minerals, Shamsiel taught solar cycles and timekeeping, Penemu taught humanity the art of writing with ink and paper, Gadriel taught the making of weapons of death. Each name corresponds to a specific domain of knowledge that was not supposed to be given to humanity. The pattern reads less like mythology and more like a case file. But Chapter 18 contains the architectural detail. Enoch does not describe a symbolic prison. He gives materials, spatial relationships, orientation. He records what the angel would not let him touch. Here is what no Western reader of the standard translations has ever seen, because the passage does not appear in R.H. Charles's 1906 edition. The Giez text, in the section corresponding to Chapter 17, verse 8, contains a phrase Charles rendered simply as, "I saw the treasuries of the winds." Dr. Ephraim Isaac, translating the Ethiopian text for Oxford in 1983, noted the phrase in fact describes a specific architectural feature of the sealed structure. The full phrase reads, "I saw the place where the winds are held, sealed as a house is sealed, with a stone set with the mark of the one who placed it. And the mark was not writing but a device, of the kind that the builders of the high places used to move what could not be moved by hand." In the Ge'ez tradition, the builders of the high places refers to the pre-Diluvian constructors, the beings who built before the flood. The watchers, and what they built bore a specific mark, the device that turns without hand. The groove marks at Giza require a rotating device. The administrative class buried there carried DNA from the region where that device first appears. JE 98944 names the device in hieroglyphic administrative language and was reclassified as decorative art. Hammat inscription 87 records it transported to Giza and placed beneath the plateau. The Ge'ez tradition describes a sealed door bearing its mark. The radar survey found the void in 2018. Excavators reached the door in 2023. The press release is 4 paragraphs long. There is one more element that the official record has never connected to any of this, because it comes from the Babylonian textual tradition and requires a different archive entirely. In 1924, Leonard Woolley was excavating at the ancient city of Ur in what is now southern Iraq. His personal journal, now held at a university library in Edinburgh and catalogued in 1978 without anyone understanding what it contained, records an entry from October 14th of that year describing a sealed chamber. The clay used to seal the entrance had been applied from within. There was no mechanism by which the person who applied it could have exited afterward. Someone went into that chamber, left a clay tablet on the floor, sealed themselves inside, and waited for what they knew was coming above them. The flood layer above that chamber is dated by 3 independent radiocarbon analyses to approximately 2900 BCE. The tablet itself, now held in the British Museum under catalogue number BM 29376, contains a fragment of text that Assyriologist Dr. Henrik Voss of the University of Copenhagen published a partial analysis of in 2019 inches, the journal Iraq. Voss identified the text as belonging to a tradition he calls pre-Sumerian administrative record, meaning it predates the standard Sumerian writing system but uses a notation structure that clearly influenced it. The fragment describes, in the last legible section, a location using a phrase Voss translates as the place beneath the stone of the horizon, where the device was kept until the time of opening. The place beneath the stone of the horizon, the house of the horizon, the Akhet, the Giza Plateau. Whoever sealed themselves into that chamber beneath the flood layer at in 2900 B.C.E. left a record pointing to a location at Giza. The record sat in the ground for 48 centuries, was excavated in 1924, sat in a museum catalog for decades, and was partially analyzed in a 2019 academic journal article that has received no citation from any Egyptological publication in the years since. The tablet's current location is the British Museum storage facility in Blythe House, West Kensington. It is not on public display. No follow-up analysis of the full text has been published. Now set all of that beside the sealed door at the end of the tunnel, under the Giza Plateau, and ask the question that the 4-paragraph press release does not ask. What was placed there? What is old enough to be named in a pre-Sumerian tablet, described in the Book of Enoch, recorded on a limestone fragment reclassified as decorative art, detected by radar in 2018, and reached by excavators in 2023? What is sealed behind a stone door with no handle on the outside, in a chamber the Egyptian ministry has not permitted any independent researcher to examine? The sealed door at Giza is not the only sealed door in this record. The Book of Enoch describes a door that no angel opened. The chamber at was sealed from the inside by someone who chose not to come out. JE 98944 was reclassified into basement storage, where the record of what it says effectively ends. The Axum manuscripts have been inaccessible since 1974. The Scan Pyramids radar data for anomalies beyond G7 has not been released. The excavation report from the 2023 tunnel is internal to the ministry. Every layer of this investigation ends at a closed door. None of them explain what is inside. The Egyptian administrative record placed something beneath the plateau and stopped writing about it. The Jayez text describes the angel refusing to let Enoch touch the door. The pre-Sumerian tablet at points to the location, and then the inscription runs out of clay. The 2023 press release confirms the door and then goes silent. Whatever's behind that stone at the end of the tunnel under the Giza Plateau has been sealed for a very long time. It was sealed before the dynasties counted years. It was sealed before the flood that Woolley's anonymous writer sealed themselves underground to survive. It was there when the administrative class from the Zagros Levant corridor cut helical grooves into granite above it and buried their records with them. It was there when the Jez text that the Council of Laodicea voted out of Scripture described a mark on a threshold stone and called it the sign of the builders who came before. The tunnel exists. The door is real. The ministry knows what they found in 2023. The documents connected to all of this are in the link below. The catalog numbers, the field note archives, the 2019 journal analysis of BM 29376, the Scan Pyramids technical report for anomaly G7, the GES secondary source citation trail, the Nature Communications genetic study and its haplogroup data, the Liverpool groove analysis, and the 2004 conference record. Not theories, documents. With archive locations and catalog numbers you can verify yourself. That document is linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. The door at the end of the tunnel under Giza has not been opened. Whatever placed it there did not leave a handle on the outside.